Hey, what is going on, my friends? I have finally made it through Dying Light the Beast, and as you can probably tell by the title of this video, I loved it. Now, a bit of context of where I stand on Dying Light as a series is that Dying Light 1 has had a hold of me since it first came out on the PS4. I have played it over 100 hours there, and I have played it about 60 or 70 hours on the PC version. And I gotta say right off the get-go that Dying Light 1 ages like fine wine. It is always a good time. It always looks really damn good no matter how much time passes, and is always just there if you need a comfort game, at least for me. The following, the expansion to Dying Light, I also loved a lot, but I felt it kind of struggled in a few places, and that was where the vehicle was concerned, and the environment was just not up to par for me, as it wasn't about parkour anymore, except for a few areas. It was all about the buggy, which the buggy was awesome, don't get me wrong, but I was here to play Dying Light as a parkour game, and there was less of it there. So as much as I love the following, that is my biggest criticism of it. Fast forward from Dying Light 1 to Dying Light 2, and I don't hate Dying Light 2 as much as a lot of other people do, but I also wasn't as big of a fan as I wanted to be of it, given that it sacrificed a lot of what made Dying Light Dying Light. The dying light being the nighttime. Nighttime in Dying Light 2 just did not matter. You got some perks here and there, but it wasn't scary. There were not any volatiles hardly to be seen or found at nighttime, at least on launch. Now, Dying Light 2 has received a ton of support and updates, just like Dying Light 1 has, which is wild because they still are updating Dying Light 1. And for the most part, they have fixed a lot of the issues with Dying Light 2. However, that being said, I still have my initial impressions of Dying Light 2 to go off of, and that is that it was between a 6 and 7 out of 10 game for me. It was good, but it was not what it needed to be or what I personally wanted out of the sequel. Now, Dying Light the Beast comes in, and Dying Light the Beast is, full pun intended, its own beast. And saying that is kind of ironic, being as this was originally meant to be a DLC for Dying Light 2, and no doubt it would have been the best part of Dying Light 2. But over the years, it inflated in size, and now we have its own release. And I am super happy that they have done this because it truly feels like the sequel that I wanted from Dying Light 1. And that's not just because we play as Kyle Crane again, even though that is a big draw for me. I personally love Kyle Crane's character in Dying Light 1, and I disagree with a lot of people that said he didn't have a lot of character and he was just, generic character A. I never stood on that hill, and I will always die on the one that Kyle Crane was a good character in Dying Light 1 and showed plenty of emotion. However, here, that is brought up to an entirely new level. Techland have completely embraced Kyle Crane as the protagonist and hero of our story, and in this story, they have taken every opportunity possible to show him and all the other characters in very good and real grounded feeling cutscenes that honestly elevate this game a lot beyond some of what's done in Dying Light 1 and 2, where a lot of the cutscenes and stuff are just still done in first person. This game just takes it back and pulls away the camera and shows Kyle Crane in full of the character that he is here. And he has gone through many, many changes. This takes place over a decade after Dying Light 1, and Kyle has been experimented on and has now kind of embraced and morphed into this hybrid of human and volatile. And no, that's not a huge spoiler. This is like the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, and you can see this in the event promotion material. I do feel like his transformation alone could have been concentrated on a little more, as in like what his body is going through, what he is going through as a character. However, what we did get was a lot of character growth for him, and I don't suspect we'll see anybody arguing that Kyle Crane isn't an awesome character after this game. I absolutely loved this story beginning to end, and his battle against the Baron and his struggle against the Baron, who is the main protagonist of this game, is a very entertaining one. And in particular, the Baron himself, I actually think is a much better villain than Rice was in Dying Light 1. And honestly, I can't even tell you the name of the antagonist in Dying Light 2 that Aiden hates, but you know, that's how memorable he was. This was a big step up. The struggle against the Baron is tied into almost every scenario in this game. There are multiple factions to talk to do work for, and they are all having their own struggles with the Baron and his men and the things going on. And as you help them, it really serves to flesh out the story, flesh out his character, and really get you behind just getting rid of this dude, even aside from the fact that Kyle hates this guy and deserves the revenge that he wants. There's also a really strong side cast in this game, and I really love a lot of the characters that support Crane and that you're dealing with on the regular, and some of which that I can even name off the top of my head that I couldn't do that before. There were only a handful of characters in the first Dying Light that I really felt were going to stick with me and I would remember. And in Dying Light 2, apart from Aiden, the main character, I really didn't care about many of the side characters. Here, this is completely different. I really like this cast, and I was honestly taken aback by a lot of the things that happened to some of them and found myself genuinely enthralled in the story around them as well as Kyle Crane. Now, I will say this story isn't breaching any new ground. It isn't trying anything super new, except for maybe its kind of perspective on the zombie virus going on in this game that you haven't seen before. And that to me is kind of besides the point, because I came here for a good zombie story, and I think coming to a game like this with that expectation, you're going to get certain things. However, the presentation of this story, the characters, and the way everything plays out, especially the mission structure, which was fantastic. There was a lot of variation. I absolutely loved it. And I really think it's worth experiencing, just even running through the story, even if you're not totally down with everything this game has going on gameplay wise, because it does have some holdovers from Dying Light 2, especially being made in the same engine. And with that, I want to segue into the gameplay of things. And on the gameplay side of things, I have less to say because this is more Dying Light. And to some people, that may turn them off. And to others, that is exactly what we came for. For me, that's exactly what I wanted and what I came for. I wanted Dying Light 1 vibes with some of the combat advancements in Dying Light 2, but I wanted that grounded feeling of combat from Dying Light 1. And I'm happy to report that that's exactly what I got. This game feels a lot like Dying Light 1. Things feel grounded, zombies feel heavy, your character feels less floaty and more weighted down when you are in full parkour and you are just beating zombies to death. In Dying Light 2, I felt things got a little bit cartoony and a little bit floaty, and it just kind of lost all sense of impact with a lot of things. But here, that impact is fully felt in every hit. There's just that phrase that I like to use of just good hits. And it's those moments where like you pull off something or you hit something in just the right way that just makes you go, that felt good. That looked good. Everything about it, I'm on board. And throughout this game, that happens to me constantly while in combat. There are so many good hits. And the physics for zombies themselves when you are beaten on them really make them feel weighty and just like more of a threat. If you even misstep a little bit, you'll start getting this snowball effect of zombies trying to grab you, and if one grabs you and there's multiple other ones around, the others will join in and you'll have to push off multiple. I do have one gripe though, and it is that the frequency of times that zombies just grab a hold of you and you have to do a little mini game to get out of their grab is a bit too frequent. I really feel like it takes me out of it when the same zombie or the same two zombies just grab me over and over and over from what seems like really far away. And I know that kind of sounds a little contradictory to this being a zombie game because they should try and grab you and try to eat you, but at the same time, I felt annoyed by how much zombies would grab a hold of me and how tired I got of just mashing a button to just get them off of me. So much so that I just turned on the accessibility option to just hold the button down to just push them off because it just annoyed me to that extent. But that was really the only issue I had with combat. Apart from the actual good feeling combat itself, the core Dying Light experience is still here. You're still finding weapons, you're still crafting different mods for those weapons, and here as you level up weapons, you can put up to 3 on them and drastically, have 2 different mods that work in tandem or even opposite each other for some pretty cool effects. And if in particular you really like a weapon, you do have the option to enhance it up to whatever level you are to bring its damage up so that when you level up, it just doesn't immediately become irrelevant. And for better or worse, this is also where the Bones of Dying Light 2 really start to show themselves. This game has a lot of crafting and it has even more stuff to pick up. You must act like a complete hoarder in this game. You better be picking up everything all the time, taking regular trips to the little dark zone areas where there's a few zombies and maybe some ultras in there to get a ton of crafting materials because you'll be crafting regularly. And if you aren't crafting regularly, you feel severely underpowered. And it's part of the game's DNA to a point where I think this is actually why this game lacks any sort of fast travel. I do personally think that fast travel, if it was just implemented into this game, would probably make it even more grindy feeling than just going to your destination. And that might seem really weird, but I feel like if you had fast travel and you weren't picking up stuff in transit, you weren't discovering things in transit to where you're going, you wouldn't be crafting as much and you would just need to stop and start grinding out crafting materials and stuff for a set amount of time before your mission, every mission, if you could fast travel. So I do somewhat stand by the fact that there isn't fast travel in this, but at the same time, you could have just dialed back how much crafting there is, or even just how much stuff is required to craft each thing. Because there is a lot of it in this game, and depending on who you are, like I said, it's going to make or break the gameplay loop of this game, because you are picking up stuff all the time. And before I wrap up talking about the gameplay, I will also say that firearms in this game, I feel like are in a really good place. They are not super rare, but they are not super common either. Dying Light 2 just straight up did away with firearms, and it felt kind of weird that there was none to be really had for you as a player. But at the same time, I understand it could really mess up the entire flow of the game if you constantly had weapons that you could just blast away enemies with. And in Dying Light 1, in particular, they didn't feel all that great to use. But in here, in the Beast, they actually feel pretty good to use. They control well, they have a good amount of damage, but are very much reined in by the amount of ammo that you can find. And they also have certain ways and certain places, like the convoys that you can find all over the map, that basically serve as your way of finding ammo for these guns when you are low on ammo. But you'll never find too much. I never found myself having a ton of ammo to where I didn't feel like I had to grind out anymore. I always had to go and look for some and was always actively trying to take every gun that I found from an enemy, dismantle it for gun parts, take their ammo and all that. So I feel like the balance for that hits really, really well. Now for the last part, I want to talk about the performance on PC. This is one of the better performing games on PC that's come out in a while. No doubt, helped by the fact that it's not on Unreal Engine 5, which developers have seemingly not figured out how to really use in a very optimized fashion. I have an i9-12900K, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and a RTX 4070, not the Ti, just the base 4070. And I was averaging around 80 plus FPS on all the highest settings with DLSS set to quality. You know, give or take some of that performance, being as I run recording software on the same computer. Now, nothing is perfect, and this port is not completely perfect. There are some issues here and there. As much as I feel like this game is well optimized, being it doesn't look wildly different on lower settings, there is issues with memory leakage, so that if you're playing with high textures, you will basically start at about 6.5-ish VRAM allocation, and over the course of an hour, sometimes even 20-30 minutes, I play for 3 hours in a row, and my VRAM usage just shot up to about 12.5 gigs of VRAM, which is above my card's allocated VRAM. And so there is a bad memory leak issue that I hope Techland gets fixed. Also, trying to use FrameGen, especially with NVIDIA DLSS, this doesn't work quite right, because by default when you use FrameGen, you must have NVIDIA Reflex on. And in this game, NVIDIA Reflex causes a massive amount of stuttering and hitches and really bad frame times. So if you're playing this on any like mid-range to high spec PCs, leave Reflex off, don't use FrameGen, just fiddle with the settings a little bit, because some of them look just as good on medium as they did high, and just use that higher frame rate to get that responsiveness. And when you do and you're not using anything, this is a very consistent game to play above 100 frames per second, and it feels fantastic to play. But anyways, that is enough of me glazing this game. I hope you all enjoyed this video and found it very informative on Dying Light, because I do think this is worth checking out. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Like the video if you enjoyed this, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Peace.